5. I'm looking forward to this one because I'm not aware of Inhuman Conditions, so we talked about that one before we started. And then I'm Rurik this time. Let's see if I screwed up the copy and paste again, because Jennie is Scoville and Andy's bringing up another Uwe with some patchwork.
Yeah, so Inhuman Conditions, I got my box here. Look at that. It's just such a already weirdly shaped box. And this was, I think, web published. It's not, when I was looking these games up to see like the publishers and everything, this doesn't have any publisher. It was published by the authors who, the designers, who are the same, one of them is the same designer as Secret Hitler. So this is a social deduction game just for 2 players. And it is simulating the Void Kampf test from Blade Runner, or Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, right? Which the novel which Blade Runner is based on. So you're basically an interviewer trying to find out if the other person is a human or a robot, right? And you're going to ask them questions. If they're a human, they just need to pass the test and not get wrongly classified. But if they are a robot, they want to try to trick you into thinking that they're a human. And so some robots, they just can't say specific things. So for instance, they have certain restrictions. So that sometimes you can only refer to objects which are in the room, or you can't use some specific pronouns. And so there's a bit of that. So the interviewer might start to, why is this person, just speaking in such weird ways, Or they could have a task that they have to accomplish, such as mentioning a certain thing 3 times, or interrupting the interviewer 3 times or something like that. Because if they do that, if they're a robot and they're able to perform these 3 tasks, they kill the interviewer. So there's a lot on the line there, And the great thing about this is that it's a social deduction game where one person's trying to, figure out what is their secret role. But it's great for like the role-playing aspect of it, because the person being interviewed, they are told if they're a human or a robot, but they get given a bit of a backstory, And so especially if you're a human, it's great because you get given all this kind of backstory. So once I was retired military, which had been dishonorably discharged. So I got to like go into the whole thing of I'm being interviewed and being judged again, and I'm kind of pissed off at this. You can really like role play the aspect. And in that sense, they really nailed it, like getting the atmosphere of this kind of role playing. I love being the interviewer because I just love bossing people around in this game. My favorite part of the game is telling people to shut up, because I'm the interviewer and I'm in charge. And like reminding them, please don't talk too much, because if I misclassify you, that could be problems for both of us, And they give you little forms that you fill in at the beginning of the game, right? You get a little form that you fill in asking the person's name and like what their occupation is and so on and so forth, to really sound like something bureaucratic. And at the end, each interview only takes 5 minutes. They give you an app, you download an app that has a timer, right? And at the end, you gotta make a decision, right? And they give you little stamps that you can stamp on, either if the person is a robot or of a little brain, if they're a human. So you get to at the end, well, okay, we reached the end of the interview. I'm classifying you as a robot. And the person goes, no, but I'm a human, right? If you misclassify a human, let me see if I've got it here. I've got like old sheets of paper here, which is just fantastic. If you make the mistake and classify someone as a robot and they're actually a human, see here, this is one that was done and they got classified as a robot, you have to write a letter of apology to the person's family, which is just absolutely amazing, because now they've been classified as a robot, they're human, but they're going to be tested, they're going to have their blood drawn, they're going to have to go through a spinal tap. But if the robot manages to complete that task, and before the interview is over, and so they get to kill the interviewer, they kill them and they get to like take the 2 stamps and go bananas on the sheet, just like start stamping the sheet like crazy to take out all that anger and frustration at the human race, So it just has this role-playing aspect, which is great, and it's really fun to just watch. because you don't know while you're watching what is going to happen. You don't know if it's a robot or a human. So you're like also like second guessing, you know, if this person is lying or not, you know. And so we would really like to have this done in a game night. And some people complain that if it's boring if you're a human, because if you're a robot, it's a bit tense because you're trying to either survive, either pass, or kill the other person. You have tasks. But if you're a human, you just kind of like sit back and you just don't want to be misclassified, right? So we want to give awards for the best theatrical performance as a human, to up the ante a bit, you know, because otherwise, you know, some people might just not get into it, you know. The thing is, in the game, if you're a human who gets misclassified, you go through a bunch of painful medical procedures, right? Which we can't mimic in the game. But if you want to do a really high stakes game, being here in Alaska, maybe, you know, if you're a human, you get misclassified, you have to go outside and get hosed in cold water or something, you know, for people to really get into it, you know, to really dedicate themselves to not, because you can start getting nervous at one point if you're a human. You're like, no, man, look, I just want to go through this. I'm a human. That's exactly what a robot would say, you know. So it's a lot of fun. And I think, yeah, we definitely want to have this one in a game night. And if anyone's curious about this game, there's a lot of YouTube content on it, because some people who are like actual actors have filmed themselves playing this game, and it's fantastic when you get like real actors doing it and really going into the role and everything. Is just like really, really interesting. And so yeah, and so this has I encourage, if you're interested, to just look it up, Inhuman Conditions on YouTube. And there are channels who have done a load of them, because each one is just 5 minutes. Like each interview is just 5 minutes long, so you get through of them like very, very quickly.
All right. Nope. See, did it again. I thought I fixed them all, but I just forgot. So I'm also doing Rurik, Donna Kiev. You know what? I'm waiting for the number 3, because then I don't have to worry about it at all. Rurik is great. I really was surprised at how much I liked it. You've got buildings, you've got the different workers and the workers, the number. So you're going to go in order of the number of the worker. So number 1 goes first, but number 1's the weakest. So you may have put him in an action, and somebody will bump them down, put a number 1 in movement to move troops, and somebody puts a number 5 ahead of you. So you drop down. Your action is now worse because of it. What Jennie and I have forgotten in the past and been surprised by our opponent, you can add money to bump them up. Basically, you're bribing for them to be better. So you've got options in there. It's a great game. We've already gone over it for a while, but it's dudes on the map with auction and action selection and a market. It's got it all, and buildings that you can place that do a lot of additional things that help you. We have back the expansion, which completes the artwork as well, but we're looking forward to the new buildings and extra player for that one. Okay. Hey, I fixed yours. Jennie, it's Scoville.
Yes, so we already talked about this one as well. I love this. I love seeing it on, I love seeing the pepper plants as they go out. I just love putting them in. I like all the different aspects. It hits all my worker. It feels a little bit like a worker placement, but it's not really. You have actions, but you're not doing specific things, but it's working through. And when you can get that just right, you can make all those peppers and you can get a really cool chili, and the names are just hilarious. I mean, it's a fun experience, and it plays well even at the upper player counts, because at the lower player counts, actually, you don't get as many peppers, and so it's not as cool on the board. But it even works, and it's got one of those, just like William was saying, he really likes. It's got a variable player order, because you bid on player order, so player order is going to change, and it's certain phases go one way, while other phases go the opposite way. So being last sometimes can be really good because you want to go first in a different phase. So lots to think about in that, and it's no matter where you end up, you're going to have something cool about it. So just a really great game.
Patchwork, we're accelerating. It must be getting late.
Well, I think we've talked about some of these a little bit too already.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's the repeats at this point.
Right. I love Patchwork. I don't know. It is one of my wife and I's favorite 2-player games. Basically, you are building a quilt. Each of you have a cardboard. I don't know if you call it tableau or what you call it, but a cardboard square that you have to fill in with pieces of the quilt. And you draft them as you go. It has a variable order for who goes first. The person who's furthest from the end on the score tracker gets to pick the next piece. And there's a little counter, and all the pieces you lay out in a big circle on the table, and you can only pick a certain number of pieces past the counter, and you can't pick anything on the other side of the counter. And so you don't always get the ideal piece to fill in your board. You get bonuses for completing all the way across, or horizontally or vertically, and you get buttons. Buttons are kind of like money in this. So that's how you buy your pieces. It's also how you get victory points at the end of the game to win. It's very simple. I think it took less than a play for us to figure out how it all worked. And yeah, it's very clean. It's very small. It's just fun. It's a great 2-player game.
See, I would say that I like it too. I think it's a great game, and we played on the app a lot. I would say my issue is that for as small as game it is, it's a table hog because you have to put all the pieces out in the big circle. And I would say that's that, and the fact that you end up with the ugliest quilts ever. And to maximize your points, you almost want to make them uglier. And so that's just, my games don't have to be beautiful, but that just, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way. But it's also not on our list because we don't own it. We own it virtually. We don't own it, in physical copy.
They do have some different versions of it that change what the quilt ends up looking like. They have a Christmas version, and they also have an Americana version. And I've heard, I know there's a couple of, he iterates, right? That's what Rosenberg does. So there's a number of other games that are very similar to Patchwork that are based on Patchwork. We had a lot of fun with the kind of roll and write variation of Patchwork, where you had to draw your quilt on. So you got to design the pieces whatever color that you wanted to, and make the quilt whatever color that you liked as you colored it in. So that was pretty fun. We liked that one, but the original one is great. Your criticism of hogging the table is it's fair. It does take up a good deal of table space. That said, it's not that large of a game, so it's not as much as a big game.
I actually think it's less than, for example, Cottage Garden, which can take up a lot of space. Nope, I like that one.
I've never played it. I really would like to play it. I've played a few of his other tetromino, polyomino games, right? Because suddenly Uwe Rosenberg got obsessed with the stuff, right? It was all like farming and whatever. Now it's all like tetrominos everywhere. I played Second Chance, I think, which is one that we played virtually, I think, because I think it's one where you just flip 2 cards which have like 2 tetrominos, and you have to choose which one you put into your little grid, and so we played it via Zoom as well. And I think, is it Feast for Odin, I think is one of his, the one that mixes both farming and this, yep. Right? But I've never played this one. I think it's just because there are so many Uwe Rosenberg games out there that we look at it, should we get it? No, let's get this other one,
Yeah, we got this one on the lark and have not regretted it.
No, I would try it. I definitely would.
Yeah, I definitely want to.
All right. Number 4, another Lang. We got some Blood Rage from me. Jenny's going for Suburbia. And look, we've got Lang again with Cthulhu, Death May Die. And then I'm going to screw this one up because I always have. The Taverns of Tiefenthal. So Williams got one of the heavier games in this group, though Suburbia's got some heft. And Blood Rage got some choices. This game, somebody was selling it online on a Facebook marketplace that came up. And I jumped at the chance. It's been out of print for a little while now. Hard to find the base game. And I got it plus the 5th player expansion because this is one of the few games where you can do 5 players. I won't. If there's a 6-player expansion that comes out, I won't do it. It's one step too far. But I think this one plays fine at 5. I think its sweet spot is 4. Area control, combat, dudes on the map, 6 or 7 different strategies just based on the fact that you're drafting cards, which I love card drafting, even though you wouldn't tell it from mine. And the miniatures are good, but they're not quite Rising Sun size. You're not and it just plays incredibly smoothly. Just smooth. You got guys doing quests, you got guys going to Valhalla. That's what you're doing. So Blood Rage has a lot going for it. It's great, and I'm glad to finally have it in the collection.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to own this game as well. I think Andy lent it to us for a while, which was great. But yeah, I think it's definitely in my like top 10 want to play. I just didn't feature it because we don't own it, you know.
Yep.
And I've tried the digital version and was very disappointed. It didn't run well on my machine. You know, it was just too slow. Couldn't see the map properly. Couldn't figure out what was going on. I think I saw at one point I was playing Catan on Steam, and I saw that you logged in to play Blood Rage, Ray. How was your experience with the digital version?
I just went through the tutorial, and then work got in the way. But they had a humble bundle with all the Asmodee stuff for $25, and I threw in. I was like, okay, and that happened to be one of them. So
yeah, I bought it because the thing is, we started like binging on the History Channel's series Vikings, you know, and we're like, yeah, let's go play some Blood Rage, man. Yeah, let's play some Blood Rage. And then I bought like the digital version because sometimes my wife and I would do this. We log on Steam and play like Root together,
yep.
You know, even though we're side by side, we're playing digitally. And we thought of doing that with Blood Rage, but it just on my computer, it just didn't work. Because I don't know, my Mac is fairly modern, but it's not optimized for gaming. A lot of stuff runs better on her computer, and it was just not working at all. I couldn't see things properly. It was just the animations weren't flowing. So I asked for a refund. I gave it back because it was unplayable. This was very disappointing because this game is so great.
Yep.
And so many interesting strategic choices.
So, yep.
Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
I was gonna say, so I've never played the physical copy of Blood Rage, but we tried the version on Steam and we never got through a whole game of it. So
no, we tried the tabletop simulator version. There is a difference. There's a digital and then there's a TTS, and the TTS one was rough.
Yep, I've done tabletop simulator, and I also have because I did the Kickstarter that had the digital edition as part of that. Was one of the just things they added on when they did their last Kickstarter. And I have played through a game with bots successfully, but I have not played any games with people successfully. And I found that, and I'll talk more about Blood Rage later because it's on my list later, but I know this game really well. And I found the user interface to be very unintuitive, even when I knew exactly how it's supposed to work mechanically.
Yeah, I was kind of like the problem that I was having because I'm a noob at this game. And I was like, you know, this is not helping me at all, man. You know, if it were a game that I've played a lot and I have the map in my head, then fine. But trying to the map didn't fit on my screen. Do you get me? And so I'm gonna have to be like playing through a periscope. No, thank you.
I didn't have any of those issues. It did all show up on my screen on my PC. It just wasn't. It was underwhelming. To be fair, I played it when in the beta because I got an early code, so I haven't played it recently.
Yeah, I think maybe maybe your screen is bigger than mine, even though my screen isn't small necessarily. But it was just like unclear and it was cluttered, or like I had to like move the map around to be able to see everything, and it was just difficult to visualize things like who is down there? Is it the serpents or the wolves? I can't see. It was bad.
Yep. Well, we'll figure it out, or we won't. Suburbia, Jen.
Well, Ray's already talked about this. I really got into SimCity when I was in college, in the late 90s, early 2000s. But my issue with SimCity was I wanted to build up my pretty city and then I wanted to be done. But then a tornado would come through and destroy it. And you'd have to upkeep it. And if you didn't play in a couple days, it'd get mad at you. And I didn't care. I'm not a video gamer in that sense. I didn't want to be committed to months of play. And it was meant to be a lifestyle. You kept playing it. I didn't want to do that. This is like everything I loved about SimCity, and you get to play it, and then you're done. Your city's complete. No tornado comes through. You get to put it away, and you get all your cool victory points. So I love it. And we went all in on the deluxe edition because we love it so much. And it's not the most beautiful graphics or anything, but it's a really great game. And if you are of the age that you played a lot of SimCity, this is going to fit right into that niche. And I just really enjoy it. And I just get a ton of just enjoyment out of seeing my little city erupt and go out. I will say the app is not very good. At least the app I have on my Kindle, it's got these weird like module things. I'm not impressed at all, but I love the physical game, and we've played so much of it 2-player, but it's really good 3 and 4. I actually think it's probably best at 2 or 3. At 4, because you have to keep track of everyone else's cities because you have stuff in yours that is created in theirs. Sometimes it's a lot to keep track of at 4 players, but we love it at 2, and I think it would really shine at 3 as well.
Yep, I like it. It's a solid one, and we should get it to the table more often. Andy, my favorite Cthulhu game.
Yep, mine as well. This is another Eric Lang joint, and this one was there's a couple of different additions to it, and one of them has they came out with a Cthulhu figure that is 2.5 feet tall and is a standalone level. So they built onto the base a track for you to move your little investigators and stuff. That seemed a little absurd to me. So even for me, and I love Cthulhu, I did not buy that gigantic 2.5 foot tall statue. It was really expensive, and I had no guarantee it was going to be a good game at that point. So I just got the base game, and which came with all.
Aline would have been like, I can imagine Aline's face to that 2.5 if the miniature arrived at your house.
Well, it would not be my smallest miniature. Full disclosure, I have problems.
Hang on, can you tell me the size again?
2.5 feet tall.
Feet tall.
Feet, yeah, it's gigantic.
And it's made of plastic?
It's like a plastic resin mold.
I mean, could you use it as garden decoration?
Oh, possibly. I don't think it's that durable. That's I've seen it. I have a friend who has it. It's ridiculous.
How big does it have to be before it's not a miniature anymore, but a full figure?
Right? I don't know. Like, that's the size of a baby. Like, it's huge. It's absurd. But that said, I didn't kickstart that version, and they had like a season 2, like they had the all-in Kickstarter. And what I found with a lot of those Kickstarters that have a narrative game is that I don't play through all of it. play through season 2, so spending the extra money on it didn't seem worthwhile. I have yet to see whether I'll regret it, because I still haven't played through all of season 1. So this is a game that's basically a Cthulhu dungeon crawl. It is not an all v1. The game plays itself against you. It has kind of like a built-in AI type deal designed into the game, where they tell you how the monsters move and how they fight. You pick a scenario. Inside the scenario are a series of monsters and map tiles, and it tells you what to pull out of the core box to build your dungeon that you're going to go through, and that's full of double-sided tiles like Imperial Assault or Descent or something like that. And then what I really love about the Kickstarter is that there's like 20 Kickstarter exclusive investigators. And so they have investigators, it's all 1920s. So you have like your Elliot Ness investigator, you have your voodoo priestess investigator, you have your little girl with a butcher knife investigator, you have your, like all these ridiculous, you have your jazz musician, all these kind of stereotype 1920s deals. And it just plays really well. The management in the box is exceptional. It's very easy to get out and set up. The management as you play, there's a mechanic where the first couple times I played very conservatively, because as you do things, you go more and more insane. And there's a point where you become so insane you can no longer function. But what I learned as I played the game is really kind of a press your luck in terms of madness. So as you play it, you have to take these actions to become more and more insane, because that's how you get extra dice added to your rolls. That's how you get extra abilities. That's how you get an extra movement phase. So it's a balance between, and sometimes as you go through your madness track, some of the power-ups are good and some are bad. Oh, excuse me, guys. Sorry, I hope that sneeze didn't come through. And so it's just really well designed. It's really straightforward. I think anyone who's a fan of a good dungeon crawl will love this game. You don't have to like the Cthulhu mythos to like this game, I don't think. And it doesn't have, it's definitely a two-phase game. You're investigating and trying to complete these things to stop them from summoning the bad guy. And then the bad guy, if they summon, then you have to defeat the bad guy, which is very standard for any Cthulhu game, pretty much ever. That's a game. But it's great. It has miniatures, but they're not gigantic. Yep. And the box management is really good. I think it's one of the better done Cool Mini or Not games, where it has 1 billion miniatures, but it's not overwhelming to get them out, and you don't have to get them all out. It's also very well organized. If you want to play as this in this scenario, there's a box that says Scenario 3, and you pull out Scenario 3, and it says pull out this monster, and you pull out these 2 monsters, and the cards for the monsters are in the Scenario 3 box, and the setup is in the Scenario 3 box. It's super streamlined, and it's just fun. It's a really good game, and I would recommend it to anybody who likes a dungeon crawl.
The artwork on the cover is really fascinating. I'm just thinking how awkward it would be to have a conversation with Cthulhu and not know where to maintain eye contact over there.
Right? Yeah, no, so you just look in the center of his head.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I would just pick the spot in the middle of the skull. And, so that's such a weird design, right? That's what the Viticulture looks like. Like, it is that image, but 2.5 feet tall and with arms and legs. You should Google it. It's worth looking at.
I will.
All right, you're up.
So Taverns of Tiefenthal, at least that's how I pronounce it. I have some German friends. I could ask them how the hell you pronounce this. But we just here in our house call it TOT, because this game quickly became a house favorite. It came out in 2019 and kind of flew under the radar because this was the same year that Wingspan came out. And everyone was like, Wingspan, oh my God, the greatest thing of all time. So this came in second in a lot of the German awards, because Wingspan was winning all the awards, basically. And it's just a very, as you can see from the artwork, a very like cozy game. You know, it's a deck builder, right? But when you draw the cards, you don't draw them to your hand. You place the cards on your tavern, because each card is a person who's going into your tavern. It could be a worker or it could be a client. So you basically draw cards until you filled up all the spaces in your tavern that you can, right? And then afterwards, there's a dice drafting phase, because to be able to activate those cards, you have to put the appropriate die on them. So each card has a die number on it that can only, which is the number that activates that card. So you roll 4 dice, and some things get you to, some cards let you, allow you to roll more dice. You roll 4, and then you pick one, and then you pass it around in these little coasters that you have. They pass it around. And then you start activating your cards, and there's 2 types of income. There's actual money, and there's beer as well. If you produce a lot of beer, you can buy more clients, which are cards that you put in your deck. If you generate money, you can buy staff, which just kind of improves your hand, allows you to draw more cards, allow you to roll more dice, or allow you to change the number of the dice, you know. So that's kind of it, you know. And then as you generate money and things like that, you can upgrade your tavern, which to make it have certain cards which you'd have to draw to be able to do that action. They become permanent. They're always there, and you always have the action, you know.
Oh,
so you're
okay.
improving your tavern as you go. One of the great things about this game is that it kind of already came with a bunch of expansions. There's the vanilla version, you know, which is very simple, and it's already super fun, but it has 4 additional modules, which they could have sold as separate expansions, but they didn't. They just included it all in. And then, so the base game is very easy, very vanilla, but you don't have that much control. But then each time that you play, once you've mastered that, you can immediately add another module to just make it a bit more complicated. And now we've played it so much that we've added all the modules, and you get this really heavy Euro game at the end that you slowly, incrementally walked into it, you know. So I like it because it's great, because you can introduce it to people who are new to the hobby and they're not going to be overwhelmed, or you can introduce it to people who are more experienced and have a really crunchy game where you have a lot of control over your deck building, you know. And one of the things that's also very satisfying is that the cards that you buy to go into your deck go straight on top of your deck and not on your discard. So they're going to show up immediately on the next turn. And that is so gratifying. It's not like, oh my God, I'm going to have to reshuffle for it all to come back. So the base game has this problem, which it's difficult to trash cards. It's very difficult to trash, because I think that's a bit more of a more advanced mechanic in deck building. So when you're playing the base game, you know, and you get the bad cards, you're like, oh God, you know, the crappy clients, basically. And the thing that makes you the most happy is when you draw extra furniture, because drawing extra furniture in your game means that you can draw extra clients to your hand, and therefore do a bigger turn, right? So it's got this weird thing of you're really mad when a bad client comes in, but you're super happy because you got an extra table, you know. And but yeah, it's just very atmospheric, this game. It's very even though it's a Euro game, you know, it's got this very cozy aspect to it. And it's actually not here in my my shelf here behind me, because Kara asked to borrow it because she played it once with us over New Year's, because she had broken up with her girlfriend. And so we're like, yeah, okay, you can come over, let's play some board games. And we played it, and she loved it, you know. And yeah, and I just really like the fact that, you know, you can really regulate how complicated you want to make it. You know, there's this base game which is simple, and you can add stuff on, and I don't need to pay for another expansion, you know. So this one is just like one of our classics. And I think if you like deck building, you're really gonna enjoy this.
Yeah, I totally want to play this now. First of all, just as soon as I saw the cover, I was intrigued. It looks really cute and like the kind of game. And now you're talking about, yeah, I totally want to play this. This is on my want to play. I'm going to play it with you next time.
No, for sure. And we've started just improving some of the components as well, because the dice that they give you are really flimsy. They're okay, they're dice, right? But they're very small and very light. So I got some nicer dice as well, which will fit more into the theme. And one problem that we had was that the coasters where you roll your dice on to then pass around, your dice would just fall off, if you move too quickly. So I went on Etsy and ordered these, they're almost like little trays where you put the coaster in, which has these little borders so that the dice don't roll off. So this is one that we liked so much that I was willing to invest in extra components just to make the gameplay better, because we just like it so much. And again, it's a game. Again, it's a Euro game, but it's not supposed to be super competitive, right? It's supposed to be pleasant. I think I've only, like, the first 5 times that we played this game, I came in last, and I didn't care. I absolutely didn't care, because it was fine. It's just like, yeah, bad luck. You shuffled and you drew some bad cards. What can you do?
What's the ideal player count for this, William? What is this?
So yeah, that's one limitation. I think 4. You can go as high as 4. You can play with 2. I sometimes play with 2 and it's okay. It doesn't vary that much with player count, because it's kind of like a deck builder. You're doing your own thing. There's just a dice drafting that really alters something.
Okay.
It's not like cards are gonna run out or anything like that. That could happen, but that doesn't impact it that much. But I think 4 is just more pleasant because it's got more people playing and it's just more fun in that sense. You hear, it's really delightful to hear people getting annoyed at the cheap customers, because it's gonna, like, oh God, no, the guy that just gives me 1 coin, why don't I draw the one that gives me 7? Or when you get a table, yes, a table.
Awesome. We'll have to try that one. Okay. Speaking of the one that angered the TOT, the taunt, Jennie and I both crossed over and we didn't realize it till we looked at it. We both put Wingspan for number 3, so you can bring the rage there. While Andy is programming and running over minions and causing things to pop, and Pax Pamir, I have never played. So we'll hit this one. Look, Wingspan. If you're into board gamings, this is a board game that's an engine builder about birds. And there's birds throughout the whole thing. And then you're going to get birds, and you're going to put birds out by feeding them, and then they go where they go. And it improves your actions and may trigger an entire cascade of effects, depending on the types of birds and where they are. It's a really, I want to say it's a really streamlined engine builder. The artwork is great if you like birds and wildlife, and I do. Plays really well. Yes, it's my number 3 game. I don't know if it deserves, 2019? Here's every award. Best war game themed award goes to Wingspan. Why? What doesn't make any sense? Best board game to be found in the trash. Oh, Wingspan. No, that's not true. It was weird. But honestly, I think the game is excellent and well deserved.
Well, and this is a game. This actually, I think last year we did this. This was my number 2, and we'll see what beat it out for number 2. But I just love this. And we just played the European expansion, and it's just more birds. And it's awesome because it didn't add a ton of complexity, but it added just that little bit more you want, and you got more birds and as a little bit different powers. But it also doesn't overstay its welcome. You only play I think it's 8 rounds. And so it's not a game that's going to drag on for 4 hours. And it's pretty easy to teach. And most people it's a theme that pretty much no one's going to be upset about, and it looks really pretty on the table. So we do really love Wingspan. I'm sorry it beat out your TOT, but I do want to play your TOT. So, that'll make up for it, William.
I do think Wingspan deserves more awards than Taverns of Tiefenthal, right? It really was groundbreaking when it came out. That a completely new theme. The quality of the components is crazy, you know, and just so incredibly well designed, you know. And it's like a tableau builder, but it's going in directions which hadn't gone before, which is about like adaptability and frugality, and not necessarily hoarding all the great cards and this card is going to do everything. Brr, you know, it's more about like, you know, seizing the moment, which I guess is what bird spotting is about. I don't know, you know, but yeah, I think this is probably one of the greatest games of this generation, right? Of the decade, probably. You know, it's a complete game changer. And I don't have a copy of it because usually someone's gonna bring it to a game night, you know. But I've played the digital version a bunch of times, you know, a whole bunch of times. The one thing, like I said, it has this thing of this frugality of the cards, right? Which I think is the thing why I prefer a game like Dominion, where, you know, your cards are coming back and they're synergizing and they're getting, and it feels like your turn is getting chunkier, right? I think Wingspan is like you're having like appetizers in a palace, where I'd rather eat a cheeseburger sitting on the corner of the street, you know. That's Dominion for me, right? It's like making a massive engine and just slaughtering everything.
But I do think every round you have less actions because one of your little, you know, cubes goes up on the end game scoring. And so I think I get what you mean. Most games build where your turns get longer and you get more, you know, you get more workers. This one you actually get less. You start with them all and you lose them. And so you really have to maximize your turns. You're looking at those last couple of turns and you're like, okay, how am I going to get more birds out for more points? Because you really, really have to maximize your turns.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I don't know, maybe I've been playing this wrong, but a lot of times the last turn is just like lay eggs, lay eggs, lay eggs, lay eggs, lay eggs, you know. And sometimes you get that amazing like bird or pelican or whatever, but you're like, I want to play this, but it will be like so suboptimal. It's going to have to turn into food, you know, or something like that. So I feel that, you know, you don't have that thing in Dominion where you get the card that you want and you're going to play it. A lot of times something amazing shows up in your hand and you kind of have to turn it into food. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's fun. This is one I have not played. It's on, I think I first saw it over at your house, William. I think someone had kickstarted it. Maybe Kara had kickstarted it and brought it over to play. And it's a beautiful game. I love the way that it looks. I have it on Tabletop Simulator, but I've never, I think part of it is just when the pandemic happened, right? Because I think had we had regular game nights, I would have played this. Yeah. I'm excited to play it when I get the opportunity to.
I highly recommend the digital version that you have on Steam. It is very good. Very.
I have the Tabletop Simulator. Would you recommend the actual like formal one and not the?
I haven't played the Tabletop Simulator one, but the digital version that they have is very good. Very good.
No.
I think we just bought that too because we had a coupon for it in our copy of Wingspan.
Yep. We did. We'll have to try that one out. We'll see if we can get that to work. All right. Andy, Mechs versus Minion.
Oh, I love this one.
And your big boxes.
I know, man. I'm a sucker for a coffin box, for games where you fight or shoot things, and for miniatures. And this game does all of that. It's also a programming game, which I have not played very many programming games. I know they're out there. I just haven't played a whole bunch. And this one is intriguing. It does some of the legacy is not the right word for it, but it's similar to the feel of playing something like Pandemic Legacy, where as you play it, you open these envelopes that are your missions. And they literally have sealed envelopes that have missions and components in them. And you, so like for mission 4 is the first time you finally see the enemy. And so they have this sealed miniature box that's all contained. It has like a little teeny tiny window so you can see part of the miniature in there, but you can't see anything else. And so like I just remember how much fun it was to cut that open when we got to the scenario that said cut it open and play it. It's based on League of Legends, which I have zero interest in playing that particular game. And so the IP has zero. I don't have any interest in the IP at all. It was a limited run, and it only sold on their website, on Riot Games' website. And it was one of those games where I was like, yeah, I'll try it if I find it for the right price, but I'm not going to drop the money on the full MSRP. And it happened that we were at a swap meet and some kid had bought it, brand new, still in shrink wrap, had never played it. And I don't remember what he was selling it for, Ray, but it was like less than half, right?
We picked it up for $60.
Right, for $60. It was a $100 game. And so Ray and I were both at the swap meet together, as we're wont to do, and we had each made at least $30 from selling other games. We were like, I want to try this, but I don't want to spend a whole bunch of money on it. You want to go in on it? And it's just delightful. You get these robots, you build the maps. The component management is done by Game Trays, and it's exceptional. It's really well designed. And the components are really neat. All the player characters and the big bad are all pre-painted miniatures and painted pretty well. And then all of the minions are just these gray sculpted, just random little goblin type things. But it's really fun. It mixes up a lot of different mechanics in combat games. And it also it's not all combat. Like there are certainly other objectives to it. I haven't completed the whole thing because it kind of got, again, paused by the pandemic, like a lot of things in my board gaming life. But it's exceptional. It's really, really good. I've played through the first 2 or 3 scenarios probably 10 times, and I cannot wait to finish it.
Looking forward to getting to the table with you again.
So I heard that, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was one of the first games to really introduce miniatures into the hobby, into like not just war gaming, but with the whole thing of like trays and everything. No one had done that before. Am I wrong?
Yes, in terms of miniatures, yes, but not in necessarily in turn. Like I think what it did that's really, really good is it introduced box management as part of the sale point for the game. Like that was part of what you bought this game for, was not just that it had all this great components, but that they were all organized in these vacuum formed plastic trays that were durable and weren't going to fall apart as soon as you took them out. So because there's a whole sub-market that developed over the years of, like, literally you can go and look up an inventory of which Plano box models do you need to buy for what game to fit the components so it fits inside the box you bought the game with. Like there's a whole sub-market, and of course, as we all know, there's a whole group of people, including the people who made the management for this, Game Trays. I don't know if you guys got your Arch Ravels shipping thing from the Kickstarter, but Arch Ravels is all done by Game Trays, and that was the selling point for me because of this game, because the management is so smooth and so slick, and when you have that good management, it speeds up setup so much, and it speeds up takedown too, because everything has a place. Like the management in this, the minions, there's like I think 3 different sculpts of minions. And the way they design the slot the minions go into, it's a universal shaped slot. So it doesn't matter if it's a guy with a shield or a guy with 2 axes or a guy with 1 giant axe. They all fit in every single minion slot. You just put them where you want. So that was revolutionary to me. They were one of the first ones to do pre-painted miniatures as part of a board game. And that might be what you're thinking of with the miniature bit.
All right, here you go.
So PAX Pamir 2nd edition, right? This, I believe we got this through Kickstarter. It took ages to get here to our house it was supposed to be a Brooke's birthday present. It came in like a year late or something like that. So yeah, I mean, this is it's the theme is the Anglo-Afghan wars, the wars on Afghanistan, when the British were trying to invade, right? And the interesting aspect of it is something that I already mentioned in another game, where you don't play as a faction necessarily. You're making moves, and that could be a part of any faction, and then you have an alliance to a specific faction. And then if that faction wins, then you also get points. Whoever has the most sympathy for that faction, right? And this is all set in Afghanistan. You can either play as well, you play as tribes, but you can have an alliance to the old Afghan powers that were still in the area, or the British or the Russians, right? And this is a very cutthroat game. You know, there's a lot of fighting, a lot of not necessarily backstabbing, but a lot of interference with other people's play, right? Because it's a card game, you're putting cards down, you're making a tableau, but you can not just attack regions on the map, but attack cards, right? Because the cards represent characters, you know. And we really like the theme, that theme of Afghanistan and the wars on Afghanistan, how it's a region that has never been conquered, you know, that it's always shifting in terms of alliances and whatnot. And the artwork, again, is they took a really interesting decision when going from the first edition to the second edition, in that what they did was they didn't do any artwork for the game, or maybe just for the cover. They got a bunch of artwork from the period that they were able to put on the cards. So it's all drawings made by people who were in Afghanistan, or by soldiers who had traveled there, who are also artists. And so you have all this very historically accurate and original artwork of the time, you know. And it's just a very complex game. It's done by the same designer as Root. You know, it's problematic because Richard Wilkins, who's the other designer, he said a bunch of politically incorrect stuff. Not just politically incorrect, at one point like factually incorrect. I think he got banned from Twitter or something like that for saying a bunch of rubbish about like COVID and whatnot. And so he was way more present in the first edition. In the first edition, he even put in a little pamphlet inside the game, which was talking favorably about colonialism and saying like how, yeah, we should bring like Western culture to these barbarians. And the other designer really disagreed with that, you know. His name, I think, is only mentioned now in this second edition because he helped design the first edition. But as far as I know, he had very little input on what was done in the second edition, and all these problematic aspects were taken away. And they actually do address the issue of the whole colonial aspect in the preface of the game. But nonetheless, it's just, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a problematic game because you don't have slaves or anything. You're really simulating a conflict. It's a conflict simulation game in that sense, right? A very complex game as well, very heavy game. And so I've only actually played this game not once, but only half a time, because we started playing through it and then we just ran out of time and were never able to finish it. So this is why I'm so keen to play it. The problem is that the rulebook is awful. And I read the rulebook so many times that I think I've discovered a metric on how to judge if a rulebook is bad or not. And the thing that this rulebook does is that how many concepts, how many things does it talk about without defining them? And I'm like, there's so many, it starts talking about like certain concepts of the game without properly defining them or introducing them. Like, why are you doing this? This is not how you write a rulebook. This is unnecessarily confusing, right? And so that was the problem, is because we decided to read the rule book before we played, and we're just like, oh my God, this is so confusing. But then when we started playing, we're like, actually, this isn't that confusing. This isn't so bad, you know. But yeah, this is definitely one that we want to get out, but it requires a bit of a teach. You know, it's quite a heavy one, but it's I think a very interesting one, because I love these things where you're not just playing as a faction, you also have alliances that you can form. You know, I think it's a more complex conflict simulation, basically.
All right, excellent. And you found yourself a career. You're going to have to write additional career. You're going to have to write rule books on top of your math.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
All right, number 2. Andy's going with Shogun. William's got War of Whispers. I'm bringing Imperial Assault, and Dice Hospital makes another appearance. So, Andy, time to throw cubes in the tower and see what shakes out. Shogun.
I absolutely love this game. It's brilliant. So Shogun is very much an area control game where you're a shogun in medieval Japan, and you're trying to balance expanding and supporting your people so that they don't riot, and defeating your rivals and getting more victory points, basically. So it has a certain number of seasons, 4, and when the seasons are done, the game is done. So I love that it is very self-contained. It has a double-sided map. One side is for if you have not played or do not play very much, and the other side is for if you want to draft where your pieces go, kind of like old school Risk. And one of my favorite things about the Shogun game is that it has, and there's another iteration of this game that I've heard is actually better done than Shogun, but I haven't played it. That's based in it's a medieval Germany is where the other one is based. Same designer. And
Wallenstein.
Wallenstein. Yeah, so I've heard that's good and maybe even better than Shogun. But I love medieval Japan, so for me, Shogun's probably better. And there is a cube tower. So not a dice tower, but a cube tower.
That is the best thing ever. So that's what I remember about this game is that cube tower.
I love it. It's so great because there's no dice and there's not a lot of cards, right? So there's not a whole ton of like variation on it, but the variation all comes from this cube tower. So at the beginning of the game, everybody has a color, and then there's a color for I think for neutral parties, for farmers, and so at the beginning of the game, you take a certain number of cubes from each player and a certain number of neutral cubes, and you drop them in the tower. Well, however they designed the tower, and I haven't, of course, taken it apart to look at it, not all of the cubes you put in come out when you put them in. So you could be fighting a combat, because the combat mechanic is you put your armies and their armies together, and then you dump them in the tower. You could be fighting a combat, and you could put in 10 of your armies, and 1 could come out of the bottom of the tower. But it's not so crazy variant that you feel like it's unfair. You just can't bank on the results. You can't guarantee it'll be a certain way. And then there's also rules for if neutral ones or ones of other colors come out, what does that do in terms of resolving the conflict? So I really like it. It's very well designed. And I love to play this one, especially if people have already learned how to play it. That makes it so much better when everybody understands all the mechanics from the first turn, because it is a game with the area control aspect of it, where if you make a big misstep and you don't build a temple in a place where you should build a temple, or you don't set yourself up to be able to defend, because you can only attack from provinces that are adjacent to other provinces, you can really set yourself up to get nowhere near enough victory points later in the game if you don't have a solid turn 1 or season 1 and season 2. But I have never not had a lot of fun playing it. It was one of my Grail games, and because at the time it was out of print, but I think now you can just hop online and order it. It's been reprinted. And Shogun, I haven't played the expansions, but I highly recommend the base game.
Yep, I agree.
I definitely want to try it out.
Oh, we got to get you on that.
It's a great one, William. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, because the cube tower is famous, right? Because I don't know what I was reading about, like randomization mechanics and everything.
That's what made it a Grail game for me, was that right there.
But here's the thing. What if it's in between turns and someone bumps the table and a cube comes out?
You put it back in. So it gets randomized again.
That's great. Okay, I'm down with that then. I'm good.
And that will happen every once in a while.
Yeah.
Someone will sneeze and a cube will fall out, and you just pop it right back in the top.
Interesting.
All right. I agree. That's it. This one though, I need to play with you. War of Whispers, William.
This is just fantastic, and so yeah, this one again, same kind of mechanic as the previous one, as Pax Pamir. You don't play as a faction. You can take actions in all the factions. What matters is, you know, your alliance to the factions that win. This one's a bit more complicated in terms of how the alliances go. So what you get at the beginning, there are 5 factions, and what you get at the beginning of the game is a hierarchy, you know, of those 5 factions. You know, which one you like the most to which one you like the least, and therefore you want them to fail, right? And then on your turn, you can kind of move armies around to control cities, you know, of each and every one of the factions via a worker placement mechanic. You basically just have 3 actions that you can do. You can either put more armies down on the map, or you can move the armies that are there on the map to another region. And if there are 2 different armies in a region, they have to fight. And the fighting is really straightforward. It's like who has the highest number wins. You know, it's just like addition basically, or subtraction. So basically, you put armies down, you move them, or you can draw cards, which will give you some special abilities. But the cards aren't crazy. You know, the cards are very straightforward, and once you've played a game, you've seen all the cards. You can actually, if you want people to really get into the game, you can actually show them all the cards that there are, because they're all very similar, you know. And so that's what you do, you know, and whichever faction controls the most cities, you know, it's kind of winning, because your objective is to control as many cities as possible. But then what you're going to do is, once the game is done, you're going to look at your hierarchy of factions, and for the one that's on the top, you multiply the number of cities by 3. The next one, you multiply it by 2. And the next one by 1, one of them by 0, and one by -1. So there are factions that when they control cities, you get negative points, and others when they control cities, you get positive points, right? And that all depends on your initial setup, right? So the thing is, and that's secret, and no one can see that. That's secret. Okay, well, you can see that, but no one else can see it. And the thing is, a lot of the times, what could happen is that 2 players are actually on the same side. They both have the same faction on the topmost place in terms of alliance. So they both want that one to win, you know, so they're actually, you know, working with each other, you know, and so you're trying to control something that, you know, you can just let the other person do the work for you. At one point during the game, you can swap alliances. You're like, man, there's no way I can win. You know, my top faction is doing really badly. The bottom faction here is doing really well. So you can switch the place of 2 factions in your alliance hierarchy. But once you do that, you have to reveal them. So now everybody knows what your alliance is, you know. The thing about this game is that it's really minimal. It's still got like the territory control is minimalistic. It's just like put things down or move things, you know, and that's it. And the alliances, the way it's done, I've already explained it to you. But when we put these 2 mechanisms on top of each other, and you get a really crunchy game, because it's a hidden information game. You're trying to figure out what other people are doing. So first time you play it, you think, oh, I want this faction to win. So you start making a bunch of moves on that faction, you know, and then the other person just switches alliances, you know, just lets you waste all those turns to just switch alliances. And meanwhile, they're doing something else with other factions. So I've played it a whole bunch. It's really interesting. And it's something that people can learn very quickly as well. Like, it's very easy to teach, very, very easy to teach. And people kind of, at the beginning, they're kind of caught off guard because of this thing as you're not playing as a faction, you know. So at first they're a bit confused, and then, but when they get it, it's really interesting. And then sometimes there's the reveal. So what was your hierarchy in that kind of thing. And then the second time that you've played it, you've probably seen all the cards in the game, and so it's really very easy to try to figure out what other people are going to do. So I love, because it's at the beginning, it's not you come out punching, you know. At the beginning, you're kind of like waiting to see who's going to make the first move, who's going to make the first commitment to a specific faction, to then try to decide what you're going to do. So we've blinged this one out a little bit. I went on Etsy and I bought like little miniature towers for it, for the little towers that it has and the little farms. and everything's kind of like 3D. It's got a gorgeous board. The artwork on the card is really nice, and it's just very streamlined. That's the thing. You can introduce it to people who are new to the hobby, and they'll understand the rules. But the depth of the game is very interesting. The one issue that I've had is that in 3-player games, you could have the unfortunate thing happen where 2 people have very similar alliances and another person is completely different. Then they're at a bit of a disadvantage because 2 people are working together without knowing, and the other person doesn't know it, but he's being attacked on 2 fronts, basically. So at 3-player count, it might need a bit of balancing. You might not be able to do it completely randomly, you know, because if 2 people are too similar in terms of their hierarchy of alliances, the third person is going to have a hard time. But other than that, that's immediately solved at 4-player, because it's very unlikely that that will happen in 4-player game. So yeah, so this is one that I think if you like area control and kind of like deduction, not social deduction, but hidden information that you're trying to figure out via the moves that the person makes, this one's a great game. It's really fantastic.
I look forward to trying that one again. Well, trying it for the first time when we meet again.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a chance to play this one with William and Brooke, and very much enjoyed it. It's a beautiful game. I know that for William, for you and Brooke, aesthetics matter in your game selections, and this one is just gorgeous. The artwork is stunning. The board is beautiful, and the stuff you added to it, the bling that you got, does nothing but accent it. So,
yep,
it's just I think it's gonna be one that gets a lot of play.
Did you play this with us? I mean, I don't remember.
I think. No, I didn't. You ran me through the rules.
Okay.
But
okay.
you laid everything out, and you explained all the mechanics of it, and I read the cards, and I'm excited to play it. But it's a beautiful game.
Yeah.
All right, now we're moving on to Imperial Assault. This is probably, I haven't kept track of all the plays we've done. Andy and Jennie and myself and Aline all played through a campaign with Rachel, and I got it. And then Adam has run through, I think we've done the app campaigns twice, and he's actually run campaigns 2 or 3 times, and we've played the skirmish. So I think we're probably up to 40 or 50 individual plays with this one by now. It's been huge success, and it's because, you know, it's a fun dungeon crawl. It is. It's a Star Wars dungeon crawl, but it's intuitive enough that, you know, over the last 3 years, my oldest son, so 10 to 13, has been a hero and has run the Empire. When he was younger and wanted to run the Empire, he needed some more help. I will say he doesn't always make optimal decisions when he's the Empire, so he doesn't take E-webs. He's kind of locked in on those stupid cats. But it's been a great boon for us. And you can find the base game now for 40 or $50. And there's a lot of play in that base game. You don't need a whole lot of other things. Fantasy Flight isn't doing the tournament scene anymore for the skirmish. I like the skirmish. You got to make your armies though. But the actual gameplay and how we've played it and how many times we've been able to do stuff with my son and everything else, this is a great game. We've gotten a lot of play out of it. So it's definitely my number 2.
I think it didn't. I have this one as well, and I love it as well. It's a fantastic game. I think it didn't make my list because I played so much of it. Same reason Betrayal at House on the Hill didn't make my list. I love Betrayal at House on the Hill, but I have just beat that dead horse so many times that I don't. Because my criteria was, what games do I want to play now?
Yeah.
Not what are the best games that I've played, not what is the best experience, because I love this game and I love the experience of playing it and of running it. And I played through all of Descent First Edition, and this is basically an iteration on Descent Second Edition rules, and it's in a sci-fi setting that I love, and it's fantastic. I just couldn't put it on my list because I when I look at it, I just always skip it. I always pull something else off the shelf because I feel like I've played so much of it.
I can definitely understand that, but we're still playing it with Adam. We've gone through a bunch, and the skirmish is different. It same general mechanic, but in an entirely different pathway. So the skirmish, actually being able to break it up with that has helped. It adds that miniature gaming aspect. So Imperial Assault. I see Jen leaning her head. She's ready to talk about Dice Hospital.
Well, I was going to first say Imperial Assault. It's not on my list because it's not my type of game per se, but I love playing it with the kids, and I love playing it with Andy and Lean. It's always been good experiences. So I think even if you're not a big fan of that type, you'll enjoy the experience. And it's definitely a better rendition of Descent. Now, Dice Hospital
and Rachel. We played a lot with Rachel.
Yes. Yep. Dice Hospital is what supplanted Wingspan for me. And the first time I played it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is everything I wanted in a game. We kickstarted because I'd really wanted to play it. But then, Kickstarter takes a while and you get it. You're like, okay, I'm hoping this lives up to my expectations. And it surpassed them. I just love that I'm collecting all these different workers. Then I get to put them out and they all do all these cool things. I get all these cool rooms to add to my hospital. I get to both build my little hospital and I get to build my collection of workers. And every turn I get to use them all. It's just fabulous. I just love it. And I'm looking forward to more and more plays of it. And I think that the dice themselves, there's that random roll on what comes in the ambulance, but you pick your ambulance. And then once you put them in your hospital, there's no more randomness. And so it's wonderful because that simulates, the hospitals, they don't know what's coming into the ER. I mean, that's what it's kind of simulating. And do you take all those ones because of the right color, but you know that they're going to be really hard to get out? Or do you take the 5s and 6s, which will be really easy to treat and move out, but at the same time, they might not be the right colors for what you want. So just really, it's a game that hit all my sweet spots and it really surpassed what I was hoping it would do.
Yep. Great worker placement. And William's going to lead off for number 1 with the game that has been around forever. This is not Dune Imperium. This is just Dune, but it's recently been reprinted. And that way we can get some backstabbing tomfoolery going. Automobiles, bag building and gear shifting. Jen's going to make wine even though she doesn't drink it. And the blood is raging for Andy now. It's his turn. So our number 1s, starting with Dune.
So yeah, man, this is such a classic. The first edition of this game came out in 1979, right? And it has really stood the passage of time. This game has like a crazy tournament scene as well. People play it in tournaments. And recently, what happened was I think the CEO of Gale Force 9, the publisher, just bought the rights to the game and published it because he loves the game. And he's like, I don't care if it's gonna sell or not. I'm just gonna publish this. And the amazing thing is that the new art was all done by a fan. They didn't hire an artist. It was all out there because people were making their own boards and putting them online and everything. So it was just like a fan-made art that is just amazing as well. So the board is amazing and the game is just absolutely amazing. And we were like debating, like, what game do we want to play once the pandemic is over? Because this is a 4-hour game, at least 4 to 6 hour game, and for 6 people. But the thing is, there is so much backstabbing in this game that do we really want to go back to normal life and just like have a horrible social experience, Because this game, for the first time, especially if you don't know all the cards, can lead to a lot of table flipping. And it has led to almost table flipping once we've played it, And so basically it's the plot of the first book. You're trying to control Arrakis, the desert planet, right? And you have all these different factions coming in. And you win the game if you control 3 strongholds as an individual, or you form an alliance and you control 4 strongholds, right? And the fantastic thing about it is that it really feels like you're playing the factions. If you're the Bene Gesserit, it really feels like you're the Bene Gesserit, because you can use the voice on people, and you're not playing the voice card on someone. You are literally telling them verbally what to do, saying you are going to do this, and they have to do it with certain limitations, obviously, right? And if you're Atreides and you're playing as Paul Atreides, you have a certain amount of prescience. You can look to see what's going to happen in the future, right? And so it really feels like you're playing the characters in the novel, right? And not just that, but it's an old school game, right? Where there's a lot of interaction. So for instance, one of the factions is the Emperor. And the way they play is that they have more money than other people. If this were done like a Euro game, you would just say like, well, at the end of the round, they just get more money from the bank, right? Or something like that. They just receive more money than the others. Everyone gets 1, but the Emperor gets 3. But instead, the mechanic is every time someone pays for something, they don't pay to the bank, they pay to the Emperor. So you're literally taking your money from your thing and giving it to the other person, and that just creates so much more interaction. The fact that the mechanics goes through another person, it's much more theatrical, you know. So for instance, every time you want to transport troops, who are you going to give the money to? Well, the Space Guild. That's who you're giving the money to, right? And it just has such amazing mechanics. You can form alliances, and then you can break alliances at a specific time. The sandworms show up, and everybody dies if they show up where it happened. There's a storm going through. Only the Fremen can kind of survive the storm. No one else can. And it's just really incredibly thematic, this game is. And it's an area control game, sure, but there's also this aspect, again, that comes up again and again in the games that I like, where there's a lot of hidden information, but you have means to extract that information, either by paying people or by just extracting it because someone knows. So you pay that person to give you the information in exchange for another piece of information which is useful to them. So one of the coolest mechanics in this game is that the combat that happens is the same way that it's done in Scythe, with little combat wheels, right? Scythe pretty much just stole the way you do combat from Dune. And you have each person selects how much force they're going to use in the combat, depending on how many troops they have, and they can place a general there to like lead the army, which is going to give them a boost in combat power, right? And all this is done in secret, right? So each person chooses how many forces they're going to commit and what general they're going to use, and each general has an amount of force going from, say, 1 to 5. You know, the thing is, at the very beginning of the game, each faction receives 4 cards which are traitors, and they get to pick 1, which is a card of another faction that during combat, they can just play that card and automatically win the combat. So you have this thing of combat and forces and territory control, but at the same time, it's built into the game, the mechanic of treachery, of revealing, no, this person is my traitor, he's actually on my side. And you automatically win, which again is highly thematic of the novel, of having these hidden traitors which might have been brainwashed in who knows, right? But the coolest thing is that you saw 4 cards and picked 1. So the other ones get discarded. So now you have information about who is definitely not a traitor from other factions. And this is information that you can sell to other people. Because you see 2 people going into fight and you go talk to one, hey, I know who definitely isn't a traitor. No, I know who definitely isn't because I saw he was one of my cards that I discarded. So I can sell you that information to make sure that you are not going to get betrayed on that fight. So this trading of information is just so rich and so good. And again, there's one card which is called the Truth Trance card, which you need to, before you play it, see how much power this card has, because it could break the game. But it's the card that you play and you say, and you ask a person a question, a yes or no question, and they have to answer truthfully. And so you could say, like, for instance, are you going to break our alliance and are you going to betray me? when you play that card, and they have to answer truthfully. So it's kind of like hilarious when the person has to say, yes, I was planning on betraying you. You know, that can lead to some problems if you leading to hypothetical situations, because, you know, when you play that card. But it's just so satisfying that you have the mechanics of the game and the interaction between the players just gel so well, you know, and this whole thing of you not just trying to control areas of the board, but trying to extract information from the other players, and this whole game of dealing information. So, I mean, it's not for everyone. There's a lot of backstabbing. There's a lot of, okay, we got to make a move. And if you're in alliance with someone, we like, when I play with Brooke and we're in alliance, we're like, okay, we're going to make a move. We're going to go to a different room. We take a picture of the board, go to a different room to figure out what we're going to do, right? So it's a slow game in that sense, but and very backstabbing, not for everyone. But if you're okay with that kind of thing, if for you it's only a game and you're up for it, you know, and if you like the theme, I mean, come on, you can become the Kwisatz Haderach, you know, which is the coolest thing ever, you know, and then and you do so by losing a bunch of forces in battle. So you're like losing, just so that you can become the Kwisatz Haderach and become super powerful. And now everybody fears you. It's just like so fantastic to like really, you know, have the novel come to life, you know. So that's the one I've been most wanting to play. And I think I've only played it like 2 or 3 times.
I had some bad experiences with the 79 version. The backstabbing is not necessarily my thing, but I will say this has some of the best mechanics. Like if you put this down next to almost every trader, not trader game, but backstabbing game, I'd probably take Rising Sun over Dune, but Dune would be second. Rising Sun, you don't have to do alliances. I went through an entire game without doing an alliance for that one. Without, and nobody really attacked me either. It was interesting. But Dune is a well-designed, fun game that definitely matches the novel. You know?
Yeah, so one of the winning conditions for the Bene Gesserit is that at the beginning of the game, they make a prediction on which faction is going to win, on which turn they're going to win. And if at the end of the game, that faction controls 3 strongholds and they feel like, oh yeah, we've won, yay, we've won the game, the Bene Gesserit go like, no, we've predicted this, we win the game. It's just like so theatrical, I think, you know, and so like so many crazy flips like that, and like oh my god, you know, it's just amazing.
Yep. All right. Racing games, bag building. I love it. I don't know why I love it. I've been asked why you think this one's great. It kind of fell under the radar, but basically you're taking cubes and you're buying cubes, and those cubes count as gears or different lanes that you can actually go to on the track and move through. So the higher your gear, the farther that space is going to take you, but you get wear. I lost my first game of this, and this is when I knew this was a great game. I lost my first game of it in the last lap. Essentially, I blew a tire. So I'm coming around the corner, lining myself up, reach into that bag, grab 7 cubes, and all 7 are wear cubes. I can go nowhere. And I watched Jen, I believe it was you, Jen. It was either you or Brianna, shoot by me and just go, aha, and go, because my turn was wasted as I got rid of the wear cubes and essentially had to pit. But the thing is, you actually also spend those cubes, the ones that aren't wear, as money to get better cubes to go into your bag, or to get rid of wear cubes, or to do special abilities. So you're buying the cubes, and there's a lot of variety as to how you can set it up to actually do race things. And it's, I really enjoy playing this, and it probably wouldn't have been top one, except we got a hold of the racing season expansion, which gave 2 2-player boards that are designed for 2 players. So there's a lot of variety in tracks also. So automobiles is a bag building game that flew under the radar, and I just love it. So it's my number one.
So this
I've
was
not-
my number
Oh, go
100.
ahead.
Yeah, this is my number 100. I enjoy it. I don't have Ray's obsession with race games, but I love the bag building, and I think it's extremely well done. And watching Ray lose over where cubes.
You seem to see that happen, and you were sold. Yeah, no, this is on my list to play. Dune is also on my list to play, William. I just haven't. I've seen it. I love the components, and I've heard of the game for years, but it's not. So I've had 4 hours to drop on that game, or seen humans in person. But yeah, I'm excited to try this one out, Ray, because I love all the mechanics, and I love a good racing game. So.
All right, we got to set up our catch-up palooza because William's got like 5 games I need to play and you need to play, and then we've got like 5. We all got like 6 games. It would be an entire weekend. We take a week off and just play through them all.
Sounds like a summer plan to me.
Yeah, when are we gonna get vaccinated, man?
I already got my first shot.
Awesome.
Later for me.
We
I
got
have no
emails
idea.
from the university telling us we are not in this one because it's K through 12 educators only. So, but hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been.
We can skip this one. That's it.
Yeah. Ray is just awful, and he, put this down all the way at like 26 or something, or 21. It's just ridiculous. He hates it. But this has been consistently my favorite. I love this game, and I don't even drink wine, and I love it. I feel the theme so much. We have the Tuscany expansion. I love the expanded board. I love all the specialty workers. I love the structures. Ray's actually, the one game he won, he distracted me. We had the new structures. I'm going to get a structure. And that's all I did all game because that's all I wanted. And he managed to win because he just focused on getting points while I was distracted by pretty structures. But I just love the theme of it. And you have to do things in the right order. And you get to do it. It's that farming mechanism in that you're planting your fields and you're harvesting them, but there's no feeding your people, so this makes it palatable for Ray. And I don't know, this just really hits all my favorite sweets. I love it. And the expansions in Tuscany, astrometrical powers. The one thing we found, and again, we've played this a ton, is there are definitely some called mamas and papas. There are definitely some combos that are better than others. And, we usually just go with whatever, and we've tried a bunch of different things, but there's definitely some that seem more powerful than others in that broken mentality. But again, we played it tons. There's certain modules that we played, we don't play, but I can see other people liking them. But we just continuously, I like it. Though I will agree with Ray, it was not good at 6. Pete actually gave up and walked away from the board, and Ray had to replace him just because it was taking that long. So, and it wasn't that it was over Pete's head or anything like that. It was just, he was done. It was taking too long between turns. But, other than that, I've never had a bad play of this game.
Euro games top out at 5.
I think I've played this one once, and I enjoyed it. Yeah, I like how Jamie Stegmaier has like mechanical themes that reappear in games. He loves putting pretty buildings down on the board, basically. Yep. I think one of his most recent games, and I can't remember now, Tapestry, is all about that, the pre-painted miniatures that you get to put and everything. Scythe has a little bit of that. Does this game have like little tracks where where things go on the track and they progress through a track?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. So you have your wine, and you age your wine each year. So you have to plant it first, and then you harvest it, and then once it goes into your cellars, it ages. And that, I think, might be what you're thinking of, because each season it ages, and so obviously the more it's aged, it makes the higher point value wines. And you combine them because you can just make a white or a red wine, but if you want to make a Chardonnay, or you want to make a different one,
Blush.
a blush,
Yeah.
you have to combine the red and the white, and you add up the point totals of how much they've aged. And then they age once they're in the wine cellar made as wine, they age. And again, so that you can plan that okay, I need a 7 blush. Well, I can make a 6, and then next season it'll be a 7.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard good things about this one. Aline has played it and enjoyed it. I don't think Peter didn't enjoy it. He was just done. he's got a brain limit where he just is like, no.
Well, the game just wouldn't end. I can't blame Pete at all for walking away from it. You know what I mean? It was just one of those games that just wouldn't end because at 6, it just, yeah.
And the last one up, last number 1, Blood Rage.
I love this game. This has been my favorite game for, 8 years now? 7 years maybe? I have played this game. I got to be getting close to the Scythe, your Scythe game counts there, William, and the number of times I played this thing. And I've taught it, and I could probably tell you all the rules off the top of my head without needing a book. I missed the first Kickstarter. I saw it, but I didn't purchase it. And then when I played the game, I loved it so much that I really regretted missing it. And it all came out back on Kickstarter a couple of years ago. And so I got all the blinged out components, the giant neoprene rollout board, all the extra Kickstarter exclusive monsters, all that kind of stuff, which I've enjoyed. What I love about this game is it does a lot of things really well. Everyone starts out, you pick a faction, but it doesn't matter. You build your faction as you go through the game. The board forces you to have interaction, but you don't necessarily have to have conflict, unless you're in a place where someone else starts conflict, and then you're a Viking, so you have to go in and fight. You don't. But it's really not about the combat. It's about doing the math to figure out, is the combat worth it? And also about which strategy you take to win, because there's 4 or 5 different paths to victory. And if you draft right, your path to victory could be getting into fights that you know you will lose. And I really enjoy that about this game. And then because it's open, everyone, no one sees what's in your hand exactly, but everyone can see what you've built on your board. And if you know all the upgrades, you can see what people are going towards. So I had a game where I was poised to win. Like, it was the end of the game. It was the final age, the 3rd age. It only has 3 ages, so it just goes, and you have a certain number of points. You do the points. You have rage, which is your energy basically, and as you go around the circle, everyone uses rage to do their actions. And when you're out of rage, you're done with the round, and you just get skipped as the round continues. And the only thing you can do is react if someone attacks you or in your own province where there's a conflict. And so I had built my entire clan around getting losing fights, around going in and dying. And so another player had figured that out and had done, enough of the mental math to know that I was probably going to win if all my guys died. And so they filled up the area that I was in with because every section on the board has a population limit. They filled up the area that I was in, and then just burned all their rage on other things and never started a conflict. And I had already burned all of my rage getting everything on the board. So I could not start a conflict. They weren't going to start a conflict, and I lost the game by like 20 points because none of my things died. And it was just, I just really enjoyed that particular playthrough, because I'd seen so many people play that strategy and had been like, oh, all you have to do is just not kill them. But I'd never seen someone actually pull it off as well as that guy did. And it was it was neat to see. But it's just a game that it's just so well designed. It runs so smoothly. It has a consistent amount of time you play it. Like, it does not take longer than a certain amount of time. 45 minutes to an hour, you're done every time, because it's on a built-in timer. there's, you know, so every once in a while you run into somebody who has analysis paralysis, but it doesn't really slow this game down all that much because there's only so much to analyze. You got 7 actions. You pick one of those and you do it. And if you pass, you lose all of your energy. And everybody else wants to be done with the turn so we can keep playing. So I've never had it just get stuck on AP. And it's really elegant in its design. The only thing I don't like about it is that it has the name Blood Rage, so it feels like it's this super violent, hyper graphic game, and it's really not about the combat. It just isn't. That's a piece of it, and that's certainly something you have to strategically figure in. And it has all these minis and all these other things that I love in games. So for me, it's really good. I'm super excited about that Lang's newest one in this series, Ankh, is currently being produced and should be shipped next year. So I'm very excited to have that one.
Nice.
Is that new one about like Egypt or something?
Yes. Oh yes. Yeah. If you go, and it does the same thing that Rising Sun did and that Blood Rage does, and it has all of these. So it's all Egyptian, and you're playing the different Egyptian gods and their followers.
I think Blood Rage is amazing as well. It's definitely one that I'd like to own and like really get familiar with the strategies, right? Because it feels like at the beginning of the game, you're not picking moves, you're picking a general long-term strategy. You know, what's going to be my thing? And I'm going to go for like just winning fights or the famous like low-key strategies where we want to get killed and steal rage while you're doing it and that kind of thing. And I feel that, you know, it's kind of like, that's kind of what I like about Catan as well, is that you look at the board and like, now I need to decide not where to place my guys, but what strategy am I going for based on the board, and then I decide where to place my guys. You know, so yeah.
And the drafting element of it is really neat, and then the whole decision for what do I want to upgrade first. Do I want to increase the number of figures I can have on the board so I can be in more places, or do I want to increase my rage so that I can do more things in the next 2 ages, or do I want to get more victory points when I win a combat? And then the fact that it has drafting at the beginning of every game, once everybody knows what's in those drafts, it's huge. Like that adds a whole lot to it, because you can see, oh, they're building this. I'm going to draft this card, even though I may never use it, and I'm going to discard it. But you have to weigh, is it worth the risk of that versus of this better card that for your strategy? Like, is it worth selling them down the river? It's just full of decisions like that.
I think it also bypasses a problem that a lot of games that have combat and multiplayer have, where this is something that happens a lot inside, where 2 people fight. You know, you actually want to watch 2 people fighting from afar, because then you come, one guy wins, but he's weakened, and then you come off and just pick them out. You know, this happens a lot in multiplayer combat games, and it doesn't happen in Blood Rage because of the variability of strategy. You know, and the way things can move, and this variability of strategy, which is something that I found very disappointing in a lot of. It's not necessarily disappointing, but it's, you know, it happens inside a lot that new players come in and they think it's all about fighting, and you just pick off the leftovers. You know, this happens in Tigris and Euphrates as well. 2 people go in and fight, they're depleted. Now the 3rd person comes in, and so you have this Mexican standoff where no one moves, where everyone's like,
And that doesn't happen as much in Blood Rage, because it's also very easy to resummon all of your forces in the next age and get them back on the board. So even if they die, they tend to come back. And if you've it's not that bad. One of my favorite rules in the game is that if there's a tie in a combat, everybody dies and nobody wins. Like, I think that does a lot for that. Like, so, and I've definitely played in many combats where I've been like, I think they're gonna get a total of 6. I don't think either of us need these points. Here's 6. And then we wipe it all off. And then it's just like, yeah, I know I didn't get any points there. And I lost, you know, some figures. But I also hamstrung their whole strategy because I saw what they were doing. So Yeah, it's just elegant. It's really well designed.
And then I walk in and I pillage. There's nobody here.
Right?
'Cause
And that's
they're
the
all
funny thing
dead.
too. Like you pillage, so you get the upgrade to your game, but you get no victory points for pillaging.
Yeah.
So
You
like
get the upgrade, but no points.
They make you fight to get the victory points. If you're just going for pillaging and getting victory, if you're going for combat to win, it's just fun. I like it a lot.
So I tossed up real quick Ankh. It's not out yet, but which I always think is hilarious because Ankh has a rating of 7.2 and nobody's played it yet. Best with 3 to 5. Are you sure? Because nobody's played it yet, but the play testers. However, it's an Eric Lang game, so people are on board. So that was our top 20 for all of us, and thank you all for watching, and thank you, William and Andy, for coming and talking to us, and we'll see everybody later.
Oh, that was fun. Thanks for having me.
It was great.
You're welcome.